Welcome to /Entitled Parents. In today's stories is a spicy one, so strap in. A woman throws her baby in the deep end of a pool because it can swim. Uninvited relatives at my stepbrother's wedding. And a woman drives for a soccer field because she doesn't know how to drive a car. What is up, guys, and I hope you are well. If you enjoy Reddit stories, don't forget to click that subscribe button and that notification bell. I've had some people reporting recently that they're helping me get notifications for the videos. Don't forget to click that add notification bell. It's very important. I just had to say that. And with that being said, let's get started. Our first story is from XIY Things. It's your fault I threw my not able to swim child in a 26-foot deep pool when no one was looking. Backstory, I used to be a swimming teacher, got the job very young by accident because I've always been the sport type. Next to my house there is a very famous Olympic pool, in which they teach swimming and train Olympic swimmers from a very young age. So I went there with no expectations at all, and the next thing I knew, I was working at 15. Needless to say, I was the youngest there. If it wasn't for the shirt that literally said I was a trainer, no one would have ever noticed me there. My job there was to take care of and teach babies how to swim, from age 3 to 5, about 20 kids per class, from Thursdays to Friday, from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. So the kids and the parents knew who I was when the class was over, and the rules about the pool, which included two very important things that I remind the kids every single day. Number 1, do not go near the pool if your teacher isn't around. 2, do not go in the pool if you don't have a floppy. I don't really know what they're called. We just called it that way for years for some reason. But it was those pool noodles that were old enough to bend, and we tied them around the children's chest, so basically it worked as a lifesaver. Also, you need to know that we have 3 pools, each one deeper than the others. My class took place in the medium deep one, and the kids weren't led in the other pool that wasn't the one where they had their class. The parents also knew this. The story, as a baby teacher or any kid below 12 years old teacher, we weren't allowed to leave kids alone or send them away if their parents weren't there. This results in us waiting an extra 15 to 20 minutes for parents after our shift was done, which wasn't really that bad. And when we had to wait more than the parents had already called, and we just changed our clothes, the kids' clothes, and waited with the kids outside. In this story, this was not the case. I still had a 4-year-old boy under my care. It was 14 minutes past my shift. We were both wet, cold, and tired because we couldn't sit anywhere. I ended up wrapping the boy in a towel another parent gave me because the kid was trembling so much, and actually held the boy in my arms when he couldn't bear it anymore. I swear that kid was about to faint from the cold, and I was already mentally preparing my first aid skills and no shame barrier to run to the nearest hospital in the swimsuit. 50 minutes, an hour, it was getting darker, and the cold air began to strike us. Finally, the mother appears. Doesn't even look at her child. Doesn't even look at me. Says, "Let's go," and starts to walk away as I'm holding his barely alive son in my arms. Not even looking back to see if he's following, I had to take the towel away since it wasn't his, and I clearly didn't trust his mother. I planned to return it myself the next day, put the kid down, said goodbye, watch him walk a few steps, turn around to rush the lockers because now I was freezing cold. I was furious, but couldn't do or say anything. I guess my mother told my bosses that maybe she had an emergency of some sort and was still sorting it through the phone. For clarification, the pool area is for swimmers and teachers/trainers only. No parents, not unsupervised children. This also means if they didn't have a class, they can't be there, allowed. It's close to the public, and the only way you can watch what's going on inside is by walking away from the building, going up some faraway stairs to get to the seats area, where parents normally wait and watch a swimming class. The closest you can get to the pool in this area is by reaching into a sort of balcony with metal barriers, and they're still about 8 meters higher than the actual ground level where the pool is. I heard screams. It's hard to notice them at first because there's so much noise around between the water, the chit-chat, and the trainers screaming, but the screams get louder. As I'm walking past the deepest pool there is, I notice the same mother from before, kneeling in front of the water, holding her cell phone with one hand and just kind of flopping her hand into the water. I follow her gaze and immediately drop my backpack and dive into the pool, where her kid is almost 10 feet down in the water. This boy didn't drown because of me. People were screaming because they noticed from the seats area. Someone had to rush to my boss's office and had to call the pool paramedic. Other people were still trying to get someone detention so they could help. My 3 bosses, one of my co-workers, and other trainer and paramedics showed up at the exact moment I'm getting this boy out of the pool and started CPR to get the water out of his lungs. The mother just awkwardly stands there, legs at the back of everything in silence, and stands there. The kid is okay. They're wrapping him in towels and telling everything's okay. People is still wondering what's happening and asking around. I take a moment to process everything, and I notice the mum is in the back staring at her phone. I snap. Cue the drama. The dialogue wasn't exactly like this since it happened about 3 years ago, but I still remember some of it. Me, a totally drenched in water, totally angry teenager. Entitled mother. I say, what the F? Why was your not able to swim son in the deepest pool we have, unsupervised? He was not unsupervised. I was watching him. He almost drowned. Yeah, well, that's not my fault. I pay the school to teach him how to swim. I just wanted to record him swimming to show his daddy. He does it very well. Do you want to see? I stare blankly. She then shows me her phone with an actual recording of she telling her son to go in the water to show daddy how you look like a fish in the water. The boy repeating the exact words I tell them every day about not going into the water without a floppy or a teacher nearby, that Ian telling them it's okay because she's there. The boy saying he's scared, and then the mother literally pushing the kid. Record him, struggling for a while, awing as he was about to hardly float for around some minutes, and when he gets tired of moving his little arms and legs around to keep his head out of the water and trying to get to the edge, his mother pushes him away from the edge and he immediately sinks. And the video still lasts about 20 more seconds where the mother is just filming the kid sinking, and she's saying stuff like, "Look at me, daddy, just like a little shark." EM said, "I noticed he wasn't coming up, so I tried to grab his hand, but he was way down. Thank God you appeared at the right time." I'm dead silent. I should probably start swimming classes too. Since I don't know how to swim. Do you know a good school? I have a death stare. At this point, I'm done with this woman. Do you even care about your son? This is the second time he's almost died under your supervision, when you showed up an hour late after the class was over and didn't even apologize to me nor explain why you're late. I'd really appreciate if his dad came for him after class, because I swear I would never let this child go home with you. Pause breath. I realize something. Why do you even push him into the water? He's 4. You know he does not swim, nor float, or at least you'd known if you had minimum interest in his life. What the F? What the F? What do you mean? You're way too young to talk to me like that way, you little brat. My son is my problem, and not yours. I didn't owe you anything. You didn't have the right or the power to prevent me from doing whatever I want with my son. And I couldn't jump in because I'd get my clothes wet, and I'd have to drive home. Also, I have my cell phone in my hands. I'm visibly soaked in water from head to toes, in the clothes I'm supposed to walk home. I mutter, "F you," and walk away. I don't know what happened next to EM. I approached the kid to say goodbye and check if he was alright, grabbed my backpack, my boss jumped in to take care of the situation, and I started my 15-minute-long walk back to my house. Although by the time I got home, I'm sure most of the water had evaporated from the way I was fuming. My boss filled me in the next day and said the mother was actually at the seat area by the time the class was over, and she got distracted with her phone the whole hour it took to notice the class was over, and that she had to pick up the kid. That she complained that I'd screamed at her, and after finding out I was an actual swimming teacher, she demanded I was fired. I was not. I actually got a raise. She threatened to sue the school because they have babies taking care of babies, and when confronted with a rule book about her breaking the rules and that she'll be in trouble, not sure how the law applies to that in my country, for being in the pool area out of hours and nearly drowning their own son, she immediately erased the video, said we have no proof, screamed some more at my boss, and walked away dragging her son with her. The kid never showed it to class again. Years later, I'm still salty about this whole situation. Co-workers told me that there was more to the story, but the bosses refused to say anything about what happened next with the mother. I did get a warning for how I talked to the parents. That was kind of like, just don't scream what the F at them. And I wasn't in any real problem, since I didn't have my uniform on. So in the eyes of witnesses, I was just a kid swearing at an entitled woman. Edit. A lifeguard pointed out I couldn't have performed CPR, and they are right. I didn't perform CPR. I wanted to clarify that in the post I'm not a native English speaker, and I lack the knowledge of the correct term for what I did. I just wrote CPR so people could understand and assume what happened more easily. But just in case anyone ever experiences this, if you save a person who was drowned and they only have water in their lungs, do not perform CPR. First, check if they're breathing. And a top tip at the end there. I like that. But what a crazy woman. Push their child. I mean, whenever I go swimming and stuff like with nieces and nephews and things, and I see little kids swim out of their depth, I immediately start panicking. And I've seen like parents just like watch their kids just walk out into the deep end and just walk underneath the water, and you think, what the hell are you doing? And I actually got to pull a kid out of the deep end once, and the parent just stared at me like, what the hell are you doing to my kid? I was just like, dude, thank you very much for showing that story. Absolutely brilliant, and well done for saving that kid's life. Hopefully the child is still alive today, because God knows what their parent's doing. Our next story is from Shy Girl Turned Sassy. I recognize that name somewhere. Uninvited relatives at my stepbrother's wedding. I can't believe I took so long to post this. Strap in, this will be a wild ride. In November 2016, my stepbrother and SIL tied the knot. I didn't attend the wedding as I had work commitments, but my dad told me the blurry details of the crap show that went down. Just 3 days before the wedding, my stepmom received a call from one of her sisters, Seema, name changed, telling her that Seema's husband's cousin, we call her Bloodsucker, and her husband, we call him Brick Brains, would love to come to the wedding, and would stepmom and my stepdad please invite them as well. As my first stepmom tried to refuse, but Seema begged her, she told my stepmom that Bloodsucker had been on our case for days. She got entitled to an invitation, and she and her family lived in the same city as the bride and groom's families. Jaipur, Rajasthan. Baby. To save her sister's sanity, my stepmom agreed to talk to my dad. My dad burst out laughing at the absurdity of their request, but stepmom was able to convince him somehow. So later that day, Dad and stepmom spoke to Bloodsucker and Brit Brain on the phone and would be happy to have them at their son's wedding. The fact that my parents agreed to this was insanely generous, but that's never enough for entitled assholes. Let me clarify that we're all Indians, and this was a Hindu wedding. These weddings comprise of several ceremonies and can go on for several days. My brother's wedding lasted 3 days. All relatives were to arrive at the hotel the day before day one of the ceremonies. So when the relatives began pouring in, my parents expected 2 less familiar faces, i.e. Bloodsucker and Brit Brain. What they didn't expect was a 3 adult kids to tag along. That's right, the entitled assholes had brought their kids along to a wedding, which only they were invited. That too, after they shamelessly begged. My dad was furious, as were my stepmom and stepbrother. When they confronted Seema about this, she sheepishly said that her husband had asked, ordered, not to tell my parents about this. Later, Seema's hubby, Parasite, told my dad with a note of glee that he didn't want to spoil the lovely surprise. For those who can't wrap their heads around this, the surprise was supposed to be being able to meet Bloodsucker and Brit Brain's kids. My dad somehow swallowed his rage for the sake of maintaining peace. One of the ceremonies that is held on day one is the Sangeet. Sangeet is just the bride and groom's families and close friends singing traditional wedding song, dancing, making jokes about the bride and groom in a wholesome manner, and telling stories about their childhood, etc. When done tastefully, it can be pretty entertaining. Of course, Bloodsucker just had to ruin it for my stepmom. The bride and groom are always seated in the front row, along with their parents so they can watch the performances and whatnot. The other guests who aren't participating in the Sangeet are seated at the rows behind them. As everyone was being seated, Bloodsucker went and sat down right next to my stepbrother. That's where my stepmom was supposed to sit. My stepbrother told her that she was in the mother's seat. But the fun just smiled and said, "Oh, doesn't matter, she can sit at the end of the row." My dad was about to raise his voice when Parasite somehow had the sense to persuade his cousin to sit in the subsequent row. She had the nerve to look offended as she complied. When the singing and dancing was done, it was time to tell some fun stories about the couple. Brit Brain decided to hijack the mic after congratulating the couple and began a long-winded speech about the importance of family or some crap and ended it by announcing his eldest son had graduated from the Indian Institute of Technology 3 years ago, all because of his wonderful upbringing. Woof. My dad managed not to pull him off the stage by his collar, and when he was finally done, the ceremony continued. On the morning of day 2 of the wedding is the Haldi ceremony. It's basically just applying a turmeric paste on the bride and groom so their bond can be strengthened. Don't ask me to go into details, I really don't know much about this one. Anyway, Bloodsucker had been hounding my stepmom all morning, constantly trying to convince her that there was something wrong with the ceremony was being organized. My stepmom suffers from anxiety, and this bitch just made her more and more nervous. She was so stressed out that when she was about to apply the turmeric paste on her son's face, the bowl containing the paste fell out of her hands. Bloodsucker took this opportunity to rant about how inauspicious this was and how my stepmom had ruined an important ceremony. My dad had had enough and told her to be quiet and that a rant was not helping. My stepmom was in tears. She was a very traditional person and this ceremony was very important to her. My dad and stepbrother along with some of his friends were able to console her. My dad had made up his mind to ask the crazy relatives to leave, but my mum pleaded with him not to. Her reason was that she didn't want any bitterness on such a joyous occasion. Exactly how a little bitterness would have been worse in a Bloodsucker and Brit Brain's constant interference is beyond my ability to comprehend. Anyway, at dusk of day 2 was the fear ceremony. This is just when the bride and groom circle the fire 7 times that the priest chants mantras. Before the fear, my dad took Parasite aside and had a word with him. He told his shit stain that if he had a peep at the Bloodsucker or Brit Brain before or during the ceremony, he would throw their entire family out. Parasite is actually a bit scared and intimidated by my dad and assures him that he'd keep his cousin and her husband in check. Thankfully, the fear ceremony went smoothly and without any drama. Day 3 of the ceremony was the bidai. This is when the bride bids goodbye to her family. This is usually a pretty emotional moment. As my SIR was hugging her mum, her tears flowed, as did some of her makeup. Bloodsucker snickered and told her to quickly fix it, if she didn't want to look ugly on her wedding day. My stepbrother told her the bride looks lovely as always, and why didn't she just go and wait in their cab? Later that day, Bloodsucker would bitch about how disrespectful my stepbro is to his elders. Oh, and did I mention at every meal, entitled relatives' kids complain about the food and how it wasn't to their liking, because they did. Also, as the rooms had been booked in the hotel in accordance with the number of guests invited, my parents had to share their sweet Bloodsucker's daughter. 2 of my stepbrother's best friends had to share their rooms with their sons. Also, Brit Brain tried to talk my dad for splitting the cost of the wedding with the bride's parents and not making them pay for all of it. Typical chauvinistic South Asian mindset. My dad coldly told him to mind his own business. Their relatives were supposed to spend the night of day 3 at the hotel rooms. They are all agreed to pay before leaving the next morning. However, the entitled circus decided they'd rather crash at my parents' place. When they were told that there wouldn't be enough spaces, as there's only one guest room and it wouldn't be big enough for all of them, they have the audacity to suggest that either my parents or stepbro and SRL sleep in the living room to accommodate them. This was the proverbial last straw. My dad had told him I'd been nothing but a pain in everybody's neck ever since they had arrived, and they weren't getting their way anymore. And if they didn't want to be humiliated and thrown out like the trash they are, they'd better pick up their bags and leave quietly. They knew my dad meant business and left. With bloodsucker fake sobbing, my dad also called Parasite immediately after the entitled circus left and gave him an earful. Bloodsucker brick brain in their brood and now banned from entering my parents' home or even contacted them ever again. Simply listening to the story from my dad was infuriating and emotionally exhausting for me. I can't imagine how my parents and stepbrother actually managed to keep their cool for 3 effing days. Damn, I didn't know Indian weddings went on for 3 days. I've heard of like Polish weddings taking sometimes go on for days, but I didn't know that. I'd love to know if any of you guys actually know that. I'd love to know in the comments below, like, some of the cool things that happen on those different days, because does it happen from like 9 till 9 at night? What? Give me some time frame, people. Great story. Thank you very much. Much love. And our final story. Woman drives for a soccer field because she doesn't know how to drive a car. So I'm 15, and I was riding in a car with my mum to my little brother's cross-country meet. We were driving around looking for a place to park. We went to the back of the parking lot, and there was a roundabout kind of turn. Around there was a line of cars, and we were in front. We parked on the side so that cars could still get through, but it was an actual parking spot. This lady's behind the line of cars, and she starts screaming at my mum and this car of an elderly couple. She was like, "You can move." She said in the same way Karen said, "Let me speak to your manager." And the elderly people said no, and my mum said no. And this guy in the Jeep behind her said she could just back up and pull her car through. She looked at us like, "Do you think I know how to drive a car?" I didn't think so. And said I'd just take my car through the field, and everyone, 10 cars behind her, said no, just go through. And she had a little temper tantrum and drove her mum bus looking SUV straight through the cross-country track. It was lucky there were no kids there, and everyone looked at each other like, wow, she is crazy. So that's my story, and I'm sorry if there are any spelling/grammar errors. I'm typing this on mobile. A short but sweet story. I like those ones just because, you know, that kind of crap happens every day. We get this sort of stuff that happens at the local hospital we're in Oxford, in the car park in the recent years. It's just so rammed every day. It's like a massive queue to get into it. And people are stealing spaces. I guarantee every day, if you go there now, I guarantee there's an argument going on in that car park of parking spaces. Anyway, guys, once again, thank you very, very much for being here. It's always appreciated. And as I said at the start, if you are subscribed, don't forget to click that notification button because, you know, YouTube should be nuts of me just recently. Apparently hasn't been sending, like, notifications to people and all sorts. So, yeah, good times. Thank you very much, guys. Take care. Much love. Goodbye.